It's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door.
All right. Open the door. Starts right now. So fling wide, you heavenly gates, and prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was imprisoned for the testimony of Jesus Christ, and he heard a sound behind him. He said, "Behold, I looked, and there was a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, 'Come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place.'" That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good afternoon, everybody, all across the fruited plain. Andy White here. What you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. And I just want to thank everybody for joining in with me for another brand new live edition of Open Up the Doors. I am streaming live on my Facebook page, on my Open Up the Doors Facebook page. If you want to join in the conversation over there, there's a bunch of people already logged in. You can go on over to www.facebook.com/FaithFM 91.7. That's facebook.com/FaithFM 91.7 for my Open Up the Doors Facebook page. If you've never liked the page, please like the page and join in all the fun and join in the family, and we'll welcome you. Keeping you abreast of all the things that are going on in the world around us from a biblical perspective. Hey, if you'd like to email me, you can email me as well at ajwhite777@icloud.com. That's ajwhite777@icloud.com. If you'd like to listen, if you're outside of the FM broadcast area, the best way to listen to Faith FM is to download the app, the free Faith FM app. You can download the app at hamptonschristian.com. We have the app for the iPad platforms, for the Android platforms. And again, you can just go over there and download it if you're outside of the FM, broadcast area. I want to, before I get into the stuff I want to get into for the week, this week's program, I want to give you a program update, a program heads up for next week. So mark your calendar. Hey, folks, mark your calendar every week for 3 o'clock for Open Up the Doors. But next week I'm gonna have a special guest on, Dr. Brock Hollett, who recently released a new book of his called Debunking Preterism: How Overrealized Eschatology Misses the Not Yet of Bible Prophecy. That's a rather long subtitle. I just call it Debunking Preterism, but it's a pretty interesting book. I've been reading it the last couple of weeks in preparation. It's funny. I saw Brock on another program being interviewed for the book, like, I don't know, back in March or something, and I was interested in the book. I was like, it sounds like a pretty good book. But you know how things go. You're watching something on YouTube, or you're watching a program, and you say to yourself, "Oh man, that looks like something I'd be interested in." But then I forgot about it, and I did want to get the book, but it just slipped my mind. But it's funny because about 2 or 3 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago or so, I get an email from him. I don't know him personally, but someone referenced Open Up the Doors, and he sent me an email asking if he could be on the broadcast. And I was like, you know what? I've been meaning to get your book. I've been wanting to read it, so thanks for the reminder. So I have been reading the book. It is a rebuttal of the preterist system of eschatology. If you don't know what that is, well, we're going to be talking about it next week. But Brock does a very good job of dealing with some of the main issues. And he used to be a preterist. He's come out of preterism. He's got quite a story. But again, this is just a program note for next week. We'll be doing a phone interview with Dr. Hollett. About, let me get on with the broadcast here, but I kind of put that up front about next week's broadcast because what I'm going to share today is going to be a little bit kind of a lead into that and some of the things we're going to be talking about on the broadcast next week. But about 2 weeks ago, I posted an article from the Los Angeles Times about the nation of Estonia, how they've instituted a nationwide national ID card with a chip in it, and I posted this article, and several of the prophetic groups that I'm involved in and that I'm part of, just disseminating information about different things that are going on prophetically. And thinking about that for 1 second, I'm going to go down a bunny trail already. There's so much going on. There really is. I say that every week, but there's so much going on prophetically, folks. And I got this picture earlier today about the things that we're seeing, and it's like a prophetic iceberg. The things that are going on, we're just seeing a small little piece of the prophetic iceberg. But there is so much of the prophetic iceberg that we're not seeing. And this world, you could say, is on the Titanic. This world is a Titanic, and it's cruising straight for the prophetic iceberg. And there is so much going on that we don't see. And I just wanted to throw that out there because it was a thought I had before, and it really was very picturesque for me because it's like, God, show me the things that are going on. And I'm saying that for this reason, because I shared this article a few weeks back, and I prefaced the article with this statement saying the system of the beast is coming. The system of the beast is coming. And the article almost went viral. It had like over 150 shares, and I reached like 15,000 people from the stats I was looking at Facebook, and it was pretty interesting to see how this thing went viral. But I want to stress something. I prefaced the article with the statement, the system of the beast is coming, and I stress, is coming. It's not here yet, but it is coming. And from all appearances, it's coming soon. But one of the most enigmatic passages in all of the Bible, I think, is Revelation 13, 16 and 17. Most of us know these verses very well, but they've been so mysterious since the time that John wrote them in Revelation. In Revelation 13, it says, he, speaking of the Antichrist. Actually, the he in the context is actually speaking of the false prophet, because the false prophet is the spokesman for the Antichrist. But he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, so that, remember those words, folks, so that no one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And like I said, about 2 weeks ago, I posted this article reporting on how the nation of Estonia was implementing a full-scale national ID card with a chip in it. And what it showed me was, because of the amount of activity this article received, it showed me two things. One, there really still is a lot of interest and fascination out there regarding the mark of the beast. And two, this is kind of the more of the negative side of things. From reading the comments, I read lots of comments. I read hundreds of comments. I didn't get involved in any debates. I was just reading the comments for my own sense of keeping my finger on the pulse. But from reading the comments, it showed me. Well, there were people who understood the article. There were people who got it. But most people don't quite seem to get or understand what the mark of the beast is actually for. In perusing and in reading so many of these multiple hundreds of comments, folks, I need to tell you, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at some of the comments. I simply could not believe how many of the eye-rolling comments I was reading. In my case, it's not so much eye-rolling as it's raising my eyebrow, as my kids always tell me. It was truly astonishing me in several ways. You know, I think so many times, I don't know if people read articles. I think they just see the headline and they just run with it. They don't read the article. They see the headline and the picture with the picture with the article was a little misleading. I'll grant you that, because it showed a picture of somebody putting a chip in their hand, but really the article was talking about a national ID card. But I want to run ahead of myself. But really the point of the article was the fact that the system of the beast is encroaching and enfolding upon us quickly. And I thought that the article would really portray that. And like I said, a lot of people got it, but so many people didn't. I mean, silly me. The assumption on my part was that I just assumed people would see that the article was illustrating and showing that the progressive forward movement towards the fulfillment of the prophetic system of the beast, which is to come. I just assumed people read, but I don't think they do. But as I said, so many of the comments were eye-opening. And here's the thing, and here's where I want to get at with the broadcast today, really. Most of the arguments and debates and comments were so focused on arguing over what the mark of the beast is. I mean, some of the comments were actually kind of funny. One guy says, "This isn't the mark of the beast. The picture is of the left hand, not the right hand." And I was just shaking my head, going, "Okay." I didn't say that's what it is, but whatever. But they were arguing over what the mark is, and it dawned on me, and I say this with concern. So many people, Christians, seem to be completely clueless as to what the mark of the beast is actually for. They're arguing about what it might be or might not be, and they're missing the point of what it's for. And here's the deal, folks. If you don't know what it's for, then most likely you will be deceived into not knowing what it actually is. Like, I was actually thinking about maybe quoting some of the comments, and then I said, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to just quote the comments. I don't want to embarrass anybody. But one person speaking against the idea of the microchip being the mark of the beast. The comment went something like this: "That's not the mark of the beast. It's just a chip. Chips are everywhere. I have chips in our credit cards, which is true. I have chips in my phone. I have chips in my computer. The chip is not the mark of the beast." If a company, and here is the thing that got me, and it's true, the chip isn't the mark of the beast, but it's like the person completely missed the point of the article. Like I said, I don't even know if they read it. But here's the thing, because this person said, and actually a lot of people said this, if a company, your business, wants you to have a chip so that you can work for them, well, it's only for their personal ID and accounting purposes. And I was like, well, yeah, that's exactly how the seduction and the deception will be accomplished, folks. The mark of the beast isn't just going to materialize overnight and be some strange, mysterious thing. It's going to be a system that's already been in use and that most people won't even give a second thought to, because it's technology that's been around and being used for years. It's the convenience. It's exactly the point. It's the convenience of the system that will suck people in and seduce people into it. And I want to put this out there, and you don't have to agree with me, but this is just my feeling on it. I believe by the time the Antichrist makes it compulsory, most of the population will have already been part of it voluntarily. There's been article after article after article. I've shared them through the years. They're already being shipped in Switzerland and in Sweden for various things. Even in Wisconsin and in the United States, companies are using microchips in people's hands. As this one person said about working for the company. The system is already in place, and people are getting it done voluntarily right now. But slowly but surely, when the Antichrist institutes his economic and loyalty control system, because that's what the mark is for. We need to stop arguing about, is it a chip? Is it RFID chip? Is it a tattoo? Is it a gold star with glitter on it? I'm just kidding. It's not a gold star with glitter. I'm just trying to make a point. We're arguing about what is the mark of the beast and completely missing what it's for and what it's all about. And that's where the seduction's going to come in. That's where that's where the deception's going to come in. Because once the Antichrist gets hold of the system and makes it compulsory, well, all bets are off. We know what the scripture says. The 666 system of the beast. You see, my friends, the mark of the beast, as we call it, it won't seem all that radical at all when it's implemented by the Antichrist, because it'll be a system that's already been in use. It will all seem quite normal, my friends. It will be a seamless transition from a somewhat voluntary and everyday usage of convenience, much like our debit cards have already become. That's the frog, so to speak, slowly being boiled in the water. Hey, listen, I'm not against these things. Here's my warning to you today. There's nothing wrong with using the technology of the times, but we've got to be discerning about where it's going and at what point there's a red line that's going to be crossed. Yeah, debit cards are great, ATMs are great, the internet is great, all these things are great, but here's the point: they're all the elements of a system that's being put in place, and one day it will transition from the voluntary to the compulsory, I should say. What was once simply a matter of convenience, the reign of the Antichrist will turn into a life necessity, and the lost and the unbelieving will go right along with it, mocking and laughing about the Bible's prediction of it, deluded and deceived into thinking, quote, this isn't what the Bible was talking about. And that's a quote. This isn't what the Bible was talking about. You know where I got that quote from? Multitude, dozens, at least dozens of people that were commenting on the article. This isn't what the Bible was talking about. I've seen those kinds of comments coming from Christians. I've said this many times in the past, but I think one of the problems is, for so long, prophecy teachers and authors have made much of the biblical eschatology sound almost so much like science fiction, or even, I think, sometimes comically fictional in their presentations, that I think a lot of people are going to be really caught off guard, because they're expecting something almost like out of a comic book. But no, and this is the reason I think many are going to be, even believers are going to be deceived. Because, again, I'm going to state it, the reality of the events will be quite normal, with nothing obviously supernatural about it at all. But here's the thing I want to focus on today's broadcast. I kind of said all of that by way of introduction, because it's not so much on what the mark of the beast is. And like I said a moment ago, is it a tattoo? Is it a chip? That misses the point. It's not about what form it will take, but rather, because it's in a very real way, it's not so much about what the mark is as much as it's about what the mark is for and what it means. Now again, I'll say the mark of the beast isn't here yet, because the Antichrist hasn't been revealed yet. It'll be his number. It will be his mark. So the mark of the beast isn't here yet. But hear me, people. The system he will use is clearly here. Let me back up for a little bit. I mentioned this article that I posted, because this article, and this is the reason I posted it, it really frames the narrative really, really clear. From the article, let me quote: the small European nation of Estonia has started embedding microchips into their citizens' national ID cards for the purpose of giving their citizens a digital identity. A digital identity. The mark of the beast is about a digital identity. It's the number of the beast. I read one article that was actually kind of intriguing. where it talks about how the number of the beast will not only be his number, because he's going to be king, emperor, whatever, the Antichrist, the Caliph, however you want to term it, but the chip will have your number in it as well. For instance, like a social security number or whatever your digital identity is. It's the number of man. And according to this article, since the turn of the 21st century, Estonia has offered each citizen a government-issued digital identity. So it's not new, but they've upgraded, including a chip-embedded national ID card that can be used for Social Security, as I just said, health insurance, voter registration, banking, and much more. It now offers, listen to this, folks, this is where it gets into some interesting stuff. In Estonia, the national ID card with the chip, now it's not being implanted into their hands yet. I will emphasize yet, but the system is there. This national ID card now offers e-residency for people around the world who want to be part of its digital revolution, allowing them to register a business in Estonia, which is part of the European Union. They're bringing the global community together into the digital identity system. Estonian President Kersti Kaljulaid told the Times last week that Estonia is, quote, again, listen to these words, Estonia is the first digital society that has its own state. It's the first digital society that has its own state. But it won't be the last. There'll be more to come. And the ultimate fulfillment will be the kingdom of the beast. The article goes on to say that all Estonian digital developments operate as a single society. We have a single backbone based on which everybody builds their services, the president said. And this applies for the public sector and the private sector equally. He will cause all, small and great, rich and poor, to receive this number. That's not in the article. I just interjected that. Because as I'm reading this article, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing prophecy in front of me coming to fulfillment. The article goes on to say, because, of course, all of us globally use very many online services, digital services. But they come on platforms without any security, simply because you don't have a digital identity. It will be your personal number, your world-class number, to verify who is doing what to whom on the internet. But we have it now in Estonia, and we've had it since the turn of the century, which means now that, listen to this, we have one generation which has grown up knowing that the government is at their fingertips. What did I say at the top of the broadcast, folks? It's going to be something that's going to be instituted, and it'll be so normal, so natural. It won't be something that people will think is biblical prophecy or supernatural, because it's going to just be the smooth transition. We already now have one generation which has grown up knowing that the government is at their fingertips. But then she says something even spookier, if I could use that word. The Estonian president said, and all the banking services, your banking services, like you have here, are at our fingertips as well. Yeah, you have access to the government, and you have access to all these things, but we have access to them as well. But she says, we offer the security of an internet passport, a digital identity which makes provision and use of these services safe and secure. Ah, yes, there we go. Safe and secure sounds so wonderful. This is precisely what the system of the beast will be like, my friends. The system sounds wonderful in a free society, but wait till a Satan-possessed dictator and tyrannical government puts it to use. It's the system, a digital identity. At the moment, it's a chip embedded in a national ID card. But it won't be long at all that it will be implanted. It's already being implanted voluntarily in some countries, as I said, Sweden, Switzerland, Belgium. The beast system, once implemented in his kingdom, will bring homogeneous control to the Confederation. That is basically what that article was saying for Estonia and the European Union. Now, I don't believe personally the European Union is the caliphate of the beast. I believe they'll be part of it. I won't go into that. That's a bunny trail. But these words are chilling. Estonia is the first digital society that has its own state. Without a doubt, my friends, without a doubt, the kingdom of the beast will be the ultimate biblical fulfillment. And they're saying, we have it now. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, so that none will be able to buy or sell. That is the so that. You know what? I need to take a break. I got so much here. But I want to take a break now because I can't believe my intro went this long. I'm gonna stop this here and come back to it. Stick around, folks. I'll be back in a moment. I'll always stand for you, Jesus. Tree 63. Welcome back. Andy White here. If you're just tuning in, you are listening to Open Up the Doors here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in Napegan, WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. And I am also streaming live on my Facebook page at facebook.com/FaithFM 91.7. Please join in the conversation. There's a bunch of people there doing that right now. And we need to always be standing for Jesus, as that song just said, in these days in which we live, prophetic days in which we live. I've been sharing, if you just joined in, I've been sharing on the system of the beast and what it's for and what it is. We know the scripture in Revelation where it talks about it. He causes all to receive a mark so that no one will be able to buy or to sell unless they have the image, the mark of his name, or the number of his name, implanted in their right hand. The scripture says, actually in Revelation 13 it talks about implanted in the right hand, but then two other places it just talks about having it on your hand. But my point today is I want to focus in on that so that. Because those two words are very, very important words, folks, and hardly anybody ever talks about those two words, the so that. Everyone gets hung up on what the mark might be and hardly anyone pays any attention to those two words, so that. But it's those two words that tell us what the purpose of the mark is. It's not merely about a cosmetic or ornamental tattoo. It has a specific purpose. And what the mark of the beast is essentially signifying is that you have bought into the world system, hook, line, and sinker. You have traded your inheritance like Esau did for a bowl of soup. Think about that. Esau traded his inheritance for a bowl of soup. It was a question of not trusting God. It was a question of just filling his belly right then and there. That's what it signifies to me. Those who receive this mark of the beast, it's you are buying into the system. It's all coming together. The system of the beast, my friends, will be the ultimate surveillance state. It's the convergence of all this technology that is so wonderful in so many ways. But it's the convergence of all this technology coming together so to be utilized for the complete control and subordination of the people to the sovereignty of the state, the supremacy of its head. You don't have to worry about Jehovah Jireh being your provider. The state will provide for you as long as you abide by their rules. But think about all that's going on regarding AI, artificial intelligence, and the internet, and the cloud, and Google, European microchipping, cryptocurrency, the technology and the infrastructure that will someday be at the heart of the mark of the beast system. It's all coming together, my friends. All of it's being combined into one system. That is what was showing, was to me being spoken so clearly in that article in the Washington Times about Estonia, that the infrastructure is there. It's the ultimate surveillance state. It's the ultimate control of its citizenry. China, my friends, it's the system of the beast actually is already here. in large measure, it's already happening in China. I shared a few weeks back about the Chinese surveillance state. China has already implemented what they call a social credit system. And the government rates citizens based on how loyal they are to the state. That's exactly what the system of the beast will do. And those who take the number of the beast, and they enter into the system. It talks about worshiping. They worship the beast. I'm going to get into that, if I have time, in a moment, what that's saying. But it's happening in China. Already almost 10 million Chinese citizens have already been blacklisted. You see, if you don't go along with how the system wants you to go along, you'll be cast out of the system. You won't be able to buy. You won't be able to sell. Your credit will be destroyed. This is happening right now in China. The Chinese government has ultimate control over their citizens' lives because everyone is required, or almost everyone is required, to have the national ID card. Oh, people say that's not the mark of the beast because it's not implanted in your hand or your forehead. Yeah, right, okay, but it's the system. Again, I want to emphasize the "so that." 2 little words. He gives everyone a mark so that no one would be able to buy or sell. And that's just really a euphemism for your whole life. If you can't hold a job, if you can't pay your bills, if you can't access your funds, you won't be able to buy, you won't be able to sell. It's about controlling the citizenry for the purposes of the state. And in China, it's happening. The number assigned in the national ID cards in China to their citizens can simply be restricted for whatever the government wants to take away. Interestingly enough, a few months back, in fact, it was in August, there was an article in the Turkish newspaper Yeni Shafak, which I share from a lot about. It's a Turkish propaganda newspaper. But a few months back in Yeni Shafak, it talked about developing a new monetary system. And I found it very interesting, since I happen to personally believe that the Magog Confederacy is the kingdom of the beast, and that the Antichrist will rise up from either Turkey or that region, that Mideast region of Syria. The Bible calls the Antichrist the Assyrian. I don't want to get into all that right now. But what made me interested in this article was that it was coming out of Turkey about developing a new money system, a new payment system. And it said in the article, many Western countries, primarily those that fall in the category of developing countries, openly express that they are not happy with the current course of events. And it's talking about the American dollar and America's economy. They don't like what's going on. And he goes on to say in this article, the U.S. trade wars and its threat on countries' economies through the dollar have triggered developing countries among the G20, namely China, Russia, and Turkey, which are the new actors of the global economy, to speed up efforts to stop using the dollar in trade and to develop an alternative payment system. You see, again, there is this convergence happening of these different attitudes and philosophies about the government and about the system. And in this Turkish newspaper, he goes on to say, meanwhile, the trade wars, as well as a threat to impose sanctions on countries that are not willing to withdraw from the nuclear deal with Iran, have caused a commotion in Europe, which was true at the time, back in August. The EU countries are now calling for a global payment system independent from the U.S. Many Western countries, primarily those that fall in the category of developing countries, want to do this. I found that article coming out of Turkey very interesting. And then it said some things that another article, and I'm going somewhere, folks, so hang on. A few weeks ago in the Jerusalem Post, just this past October 4th, there was an article in the Jerusalem Post that said this. Title of the article was, "Are Trump's Policies Leading to the Formation of an Eastern Bloc?" Which is exactly what the guy in Yeni Shafak was saying. That the American administration's policies were causing a realignment, if you will, of allies, which we know, we've seen that in the Middle East, but of also the money policies. And a lot of this article in the Jerusalem Post was echoing some of the same things that were being said in Yeni Shafak. Shafak. So think about this. We have a Turkish newspaper and an Israeli newspaper saying similar things in regard to the American administration's policies regarding both economic and geopolitical alliances. In the Jerusalem Post, it said when the leaders of Russia, Turkey, and Iran launched the Astana peace talks back in January 2017 in an attempt to end violence and improve the humanitarian situation in Syria, few expected the unlikely alliance of historical rivals to be more than a sideshow to the UN Geneva process. But almost 2 years after their inaugural meeting, the trio of Russian President Vladimir Putin, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani have made meaningful progress in Syria and developed strong personal relationships. It's the Magog Confederacy coming together, despite their divergent national interests. This was in the Jerusalem Post. The U.S. trade wars and its threat on countries' economies through the dollar have triggered the developing countries through the G20, namely China, Russia, and Turkey, to come together. It was the same thing Yeni Shafak was saying. I'm sharing these for a reason. There's a system that's converging together. I have to take a break again. I told you this block was going to be a little bit shorter. But when the government controls all aspects of your life, obviously it becomes very dangerous to go against them. And the system of the beast will be the ultimate government control. Who will be acceptable socially and economically, and who will be ostracized? Eventually, when the system of the beast is implemented, the way out will be one of two ways. Either the rapture will have come, or you'll be beheaded. This is where it's going. But I'll tell you one thing, my friends. I don't want to leave on that note. I'll tell you one thing, having said all that. I'm not looking for the Antichrist. I'm looking for the Christ, because the King is coming. Stick around. I'll be right back. The fusion of heart, mind, and soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Andy White here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in Napeague, WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. Thanks for joining in, everybody, on this. It's a beautiful Thursday afternoon here on the east end of Long Island in Sag Harbor. The sky was so crystal blue, clear. It's really nice. But it's really wonderful to have all you guys who are listening all across the fruited plain, across the FM airwaves, as well as on the Open Up the Doors Facebook page. Lots of people there joining in, having fun. Hey, it's great to have you all. I get blown away all the time by what God's doing here. I want to once again bring up a program note if anybody just joined in the broadcast a little bit later in the day. Next week, we're going to be having Dr. Brock Hollett on to discuss his book titled Debunking Preterism. And somebody asked, well, actually, the somebody was my wife on Facebook. She asked me to describe what preterism is, just in a nutshell. Preterism is it's a school of thought for eschatology. It's a doctrine for eschatology, basically saying everything has been already fulfilled in the past. The word preterism comes from the Latin word praetorus, which means the past. And basically, preterists believe there's different types of preterists. There's partial preterists. There's full preterists. But for the most part, preterists believe that everything was fulfilled by 70 A.D. with the destruction of Jerusalem, and that the Book of Revelation is all fulfilled. We're going to discuss that next week. Is it, how much truth is there to that? How much error is there to that? I'll give you a little hint. I hold to the issue that all of preterism is a major error. We'll discuss that next week. But for instance, since we're talking about the system of the beast, for instance, let me give you a little bit of an example. And I've only got a few minutes left. I've got about 2 hours worth of notes in front of me, but I've only got a few minutes left. But as a for instance, about some of the things we'll be talking about next week with Dr. Brock Hollett and how it intersects with what I was talking about today. Preterists, for instance, like to teach that Nero, the Emperor Nero, was the Antichrist of Revelation. They'll teach that they try to show that Nero's name equals 666. It doesn't. You have to do real machinations and manipulations of his name to get it to be 66. But they teach, for instance, that Nero was the Antichrist of Revelation. But he doesn't even come close, folks. Contrary to what you might have read from some Bible teachers, there's a lot of Bible teachers out there that are preterists. There's a lot of them out there. But, contrary to what they might try to pawn off on you, that Nero was the beast of Revelation and his name is equal to 666. Let me just briefly say, Nero does not equate 666. I just said it without manipulating his name. He doesn't even come close. There's a lot of, I don't have the time to get into the weeds about it, but there are really several problems with claiming that Nero was the Antichrist. Number one, the Bible says that the Antichrist will be killed by the brightness of the Lord's coming. Well, Nero committed suicide. Number two, the Bible talks about, as many of you know, how the Antichrist will set himself up in the temple in Jerusalem and proclaim himself to be God. Nero never even went to Jerusalem. So you wonder, how do they get at these things? Well, we'll talk about that next week. But there's a really good chapter that was in Brock's book on this very topic of Nero being the Antichrist. And he had a lot of great things to say. Again, I don't have the time to really get into it. I want to encourage you to, just tune in next week. But one of the things that I found fascinating as I was reading Brock's book and doing some other research, because I had heard that in the past, that some Bible scholars believe that John in Revelation was talking about Nero when he was talking about 666 and the Antichrist. But again, it's nonsense. Number one, to make Nero's name equal 666, you have to do machinations to his name. I already said that. Nero's full name, by the way, his full name was Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. His name just wasn't Nero. In Greek, in the Greek isophacy, there's something I probably don't have time to get into. Most of us are familiar with Hebrew gematria, how numbers are associated with the Hebrew letters, but it's the same in Greek as well. And let me just read something out of where do I want to go here? I'm looking at my clock because I know I got stuff here that. Here's the thing: most of us are attuned to the fact that biblical numbers, Hebrew numbers, letters have numbers. But here's the thing: the New Testament was written in Greek, and there's a difference between Hebrew gematria and Greek isophesy. Isophesy. It's a hard word to say for me. I stumble over it. They're similar, but they're not quite the same. And in Greek, the name Nero, his name by itself is like 1005. You have to add the name. You have to add the word Caesar, and you have to add an N at the end of Nero to make it Neron Kaiser in Latin, and then transliterate it into Hebrew to make it equal 666. It's nonsense. Revelation was written in Greek. And in Greek, here's the thing. I'm looking for something. This is from Brock's book, quote, "While it is possible that the Apostle John intended a calculation using gematria in Revelation 13:18, it is more likely, and I looked this up, he's totally correct. It is more likely that he had the Greek method of isophesy in mind." That's a hard word for me. The widespread use of isophesy throughout the Roman Empire is well attested in first century Greek manuscripts. The practice would have been understood by John's original audience, the 7 churches of Asia that Revelation was really written to, and they were comprised predominantly of Gentiles and Hellenized Greek-speaking Jews. And like one not Hebrew scholar, but one biblical scholar said, why would the author, John, do something in mystical mystical Hebrew to a non-Jewish audience, and it begs the question. But again, even using Greek isophacy for Nero totals 1005 instead of the 666 required by Revelation 13 and 18. My point in bringing these things up, and we'll get into this more next week, and I kind of really just, you know what? I'm just thinking out loud, because I found this really interesting. Before I got a few minutes left, I'm going to back up a little bit here. The Greek isopsephy, and I have to admit, it was a new idea to me, because I am familiar with Hebrew gematria. I wasn't familiar with Greek isophacy. Isopsephy. I'm going to get this word right. Isopsephy. And it means equal, and sephos, pebble. What the Greeks would do, it was the practice of adding up the number values of the letters, we get that, in a word to form a single number. And it was really used a lot in ancient Greece. In fact, there are, I got this out of the encyclopedia when I looked this up, there are existing examples, not just from Revelation 13, but there are existing examples of Greek isopsephy. They have a graffiti from Pompeii. They have this rock or something that has graffiti from Pompeii dating from around 79 AD, and it reads in English, "I love her whose number is 545." I mean, yep, there was graffiti back then. There were lovebirds back then carving things in trees or carving things in stone or wherever they got this inscription from. But the inscription that they found from Pompeii with the year 79 AD is, "I love her whose number is 545, 545. Another archaeological example says, Amarinus thought upon his holy lady Harmonia for good. The number of her honorable name is 45. The point I'm bringing out in this is that it was common in the Greek world to assign numbers to people's names. And Nero's name doesn't fit. I said all that to say that, you know. And even in the encyclopedia, it said a famous example of 666. An example of isopsephy. An example of isopsephy in the book of Revelation. So the encyclopedia actually referenced the book of Revelation as an example of isopsephy. Revelation 13, 18. And I'm running out of time. But the bottom line is this before the clock runs out on me. Let me wrap up the program this way, folks. Last week, I spoke about being an overcomer. And in any event, no matter what's going on, we need to be a discerning people in these last days. All the things that are written will come to pass. And as the day approaches, I really firmly believe the Holy Spirit will give us greater and greater insight and understanding into these things. And we need to overcome. All these things will come to pass. And I think a good place to wrap up the broadcast today would be out of Revelation 15:2. Because John said, "I saw something like a sea of glass mingled with fire. And those who have the victory over the beast, over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name." Victory over the system of the beast and everything it stands for. And John said, "I saw them standing on a sea of glass, having harps of God, and they sang the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb." And I think I'll end it there. I have to end it there. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to another edition of Open Up the Doors. I'll be back next week with Dr. Brock Hollett, but keep it right here on Faith FM. There's still some great Christian programming coming up. God bless you, everybody. I cannot believe how fast an hour went by.